Hello, my name is Zwicker. I'm a student from Freie Universität Berlin, and for the module European Integration within the Certificate of European Studies, I am going to present you the poster that I created with two group mates, Kolja Jaglowski and Marlene Rakles. This is the poster. We focused on the anti-chair crisis, one of the many milestones within the European integration process. Today I'm going to present it to you from 5 different angles. First, the political dimension, historical dimension, philosophical dimension, theoretical dimension, legal dimension, and at the end of the video I'm going to come back to the poster itself and explain the design choices we made and just sum everything up. The anti-chair crisis was one of the earliest and most significant institutional crisis of the history of European integration. To kind of contextualize the historic significance of it, I'm going to start by explaining the context and everything that has happened building up to the crisis. At the time of the crisis, European integration had already moved beyond the sectorial framework of the ECSC, the European European Coal and Steel Community. And since the treaties of Rome a few years before, 1957, the integration was organized within the European Economic Community and Euratom. And they aimed at establishing a common market and common policies. So we can see that there were supranational dynamics that were dominant. And in the years before, with the treaties of Rome, an expansion of qualified majority voting was pursued, as well as the development of the community's own financial resources, particularly in the sense of the Common Agricultural Policy, shortly CAP. So this is kind of everything that has built up to the moment where the crisis began, with the French government deciding not to attend the Council of Ministers of the European Economic Community between July 1965 and January 1966. 1966. Now talking about the political dimension. So we have the proposal of the Commission of the European Economic Community, which proposed the introduction of qualified majority voting in the Common Agricultural Policy, as well as the strengthening of the Parliament in combination with the financing of the Common Agricultural Policy. So things that have a very strong supranational character. That resulted at the one of the central political actors we have when looking or analyzing this crisis, which was the French president Charles de Gaulle. We decided to include a picture of his on our poster right on the top. This is him. And we also decided to include a quote of Charles de Gaulle to underline the strong emphasis that he put on him opposing this proposal of the Commission of the ECC, of the EEC. And I will just read out the quote. Charles de Gaulle said, "This crisis must be used to put an end to ulterior political motives. It can be the case that from January 1st, 1966, our economy will be subjected to settlement on majority voting by which our partners force us to accept their will. This opportunity must be used to revise the false concept by which we have been subjected to the dictates of others, and this nonsense." So I think that this quote makes quite clear that he was he very much did not want want the qualified majority voting to be realized, because he wanted to secure the essentially he was very adamant not to lose the French control, the member state national control over this situation, and he wanted to secure the definitive financing of the common agricultural policy, and at the same time stop the qualified majority voting because he saw it as a threat to French interest. From a legal perspective, the treaties of Rome had already allowed for qualified majority voting in certain policy areas. Yet, the political practice, as we see, was different from the legal framework. And the main legal consequence of the crisis was the Luxembourg Compromise of January 1966. It was not legally binding, but it established a political norm whereby decision-making would go on until unanimity would be reached. And if a member claimed that proposal affected its vital national interests, it could not be further realized. So this Luxembourg Compromise was de facto an extra-legal veto right for national governments. So, as we see, the crisis demonstrated that formal legal rules can coexist with informal political conventions, and while EU law formally retained its supranational character, the Luxembourg Compromise, with the de facto veto right, reasserted intergovernmental dominance and highlighted the limits of the legal integration when we don't have the political consensus of the member states. And I would say that, and to sum it up, the crisis illustrates the extent to which EU law can be constrained, suspended, and just informally reinterpreted through the political power of a single member state, which in this case is France. So when we look at the anti-Turk crisis from a philosophical standpoint, we very quickly touch the question of sovereignty, which is at heart of many European integration bargaining and crisis and milestones. How much sovereignty can be transferred to this supranational organization without losing the ability to defend your national interests on the domestic or international level? This is exactly what Charles de Gaulle was afraid, losing the ability to impose the own national French interests. The question of national sovereignty in general, of course, was discussed numerous times. Our group decided to touch upon just a few names to kind of place this within the philosophical discourse. Immanuel Kant, in his book Zum ewigen Frieden, ein philosophischer Entwurf, can be read as indicating the necessity of a world state, and kind of, actually in favor of giving up a certain amount of sovereignty to create this state. And related to this, we have Victor Hugo with this idea of European fraternity, which can be seen as a call for absolute integration, which obviously contradicts with the real world happenings in the anti-Czech crisis, and did not align with what Charles de Gaulle wanted. Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi may be the most applicable to this situation, because he warned about touching the common sovereignty of the nations, and also foresaw future war in Europe, like a collapse even when integration would go on further. And we can relate this scenario directly to the field of tension that existed in the empty chair crisis between Charles de Gaulle trying to protect the French sovereignty and the French economic interest also in the agricultural sector, and the Commission's goal of further integration. Now, lastly, I want to have a look at the empty chair crisis from the perspective of European integration theories. The empty chair crisis actually poses a challenge to a few integration theories, particularly to federalist and neo-functionalist approaches. Because when we have the federalist perspective, Charles de Gaulle actions clearly are against building this federal body with the different levels of sovereignty, because Charles de Gaulle certainly did not want to transfer any authority from the nation-state level to supranational level, and by blocking the decision-making in Brussels, de Gaulle aimed to prevent the emergence of a political system in which the supranational actors could override the national sovereignty. When we have neo-functionalism with the spillover effects and then further integration from that, we can also say that this is opposed, because rather than accelerating integration, when trying to kind of accelerate the common agricultural policy on a European level, we kind of see the opposite of that happening, because it actually provoked resistance and retrenchment from France. And so the empty chair crisis much rather demonstrate that integration is contingent on continued political support from powerful member states. And therefore, it's not surprising that the crisis is a very popular case for liberal intergovernmentalism. According to Moravcsik, which is one of the main theorists in the liberal intergovernmentalism, member states act rationally to defend their national interests and preferences that are shaped by domestic and economic political interests, for example, in this case, the French agriculture. So France's opposition was driven by concerns over their own financing in agriculture, the budgetary autonomy, and political control in the end. So from the perspective of liberal intergovernmentalism, the boycott presents the move to maximize national gains within the integration process, and therefore I think it can be best explained through that theory. Lastly, I just wanted to make a few last comments on the design choices when it came to creating the poster, as we think that the empty chair crisis still is a very relevant case study until today when it comes to analyzing the questions of supranational sovereignty and international intergovernmental bargaining. We chose to have these bright and very bright colors and modern design. We obviously have the empty chairs as a clear symbol for the French boycott in the Council of Ministers. And we, as I already said in the beginning, it was important to us to have Charles de Gaulle as the central figure, political actor, right at the top, because he and the French government was the one that slowed down the whole European integration process at that time. And another detail is the sale signs, which just represent the national bargaining. And yes, this was the poster, this was the empty check crisis. Thank you very much for your attention.